السلام عليكم طلابي الأعزاء، كيف حالكم اليوم؟ Today probably is one of the most important videos regarding writing and speaking in IELTS. We're going to talk about sentence types. You may contact me on this mobile number if you're interested in taking classes with me. Let's get started now. The first type of sentences is called simple sentences. Probably we all know it and use it a lot. It contains one subject, that is the doer of the action, and then we have one verb or verb phrase. An example is, I have a beautiful garden. I is a subject, then we have, which is the verb, and then another example here, our government is seeking new solutions for the economic crisis. Now, believe it or not, this is also a simple sentence. We have subject is seeking. This is a verb phrase because it has actually two verbs, is and seeking. And of course, this type of sentences is not recommended a lot in IELTS writing or speaking. You may use it, but do not overuse simple sentences. The more complex your structure is, the better. If you keep using simple sentences all the time, you're going to lose marks. The second type is called complex sentence. Now, a complex sentence includes one independent clause and one or more subordinate clauses. Now, we're going to talk about this in a minute. Let's have a look at this example and then I'm going to explain to you. As you can see here, he couldn't leave the hospital due to some surgical complications. Now, if you look closely, he couldn't leave the hospital. Now you can see that this part can actually be a sentence on its own. It means you can take it, put it aside, and it stands as an independent, fully meaningful sentence. Let's look at the second part here, due to some surgical complications. Now if I put this aside or put it separately as one sentence, due to some surgical complications, there is something missing, right? It feels like it is incomplete. You need to add something, and that is why we call the first one independent clause. It can stand alone as a one full sentence, meaningful sentence, everything is fine. The second one is called a dependent clause because it's not really a full sentence. You cannot put it alone, it cannot stand alone. It needs some extra things to be added so that the meaning will be full. This is very important. Complex sentences are actually good to use in IELTS speaking and writing, and they can come in a variety of shapes actually. So an independent clause again, it can stand alone as a sentence. For example, he couldn't leave the hospital. A dependent clause due to some surgical complications. As you can see here, the meaning is incomplete, so something is missing here. We have to add something. So now let's try something. I'm going to swap these two parts. As you can see here, I decided to put the dependent clause at the beginning and then the independent clause here. So what would I add here? There's something that has to be changed. Let's read it together. Due to some surgical complications, he couldn't leave the hospital. So there is something missing. Actually, you need to add a comma here, as you can see. Of course, you need to add a full stop at the end. So the rule is whenever you decide to start with the dependent clause, make sure to put a comma at the end of it to separate it from the independent clause. If you swap this, you don't need the comma. If you start with the independent clause, you actually do not need a comma to separate these two clauses from each other. Now, dependent and independent clauses are joined by subordinate conjunctions. We call them subordinate conjunctions. That is because these two parts are not equal. Some subordinate conjunctions are because, while, if, since, when, and before. And of course, there are many more. I've just given you some examples here, and you can look them up. They're called subordinate conjunctions. The third type of sentences in English is called compound sentences. This is made of two independent clauses joined by coordinate conjunction. These are easy to identify actually because they usually use coordinate conjunctions. Now remember, usually use, not all the time. So what are these coordinate conjunctions that I can use to make compound sentences? Some examples are and, but, or, nor, and yet. So these are some of the coordinate conjunctions used to make this compound sentence. Now let's look at an example here. You will face many defeats in life, but never let yourself be defeated. This is a quote by Maya Angelou. Let's look at this one here. You will face many defeats in your life. This is what the first independent clause. Can I take it and put it separately as a full sentence? Yes, it is totally independent. It can stand alone as one full sentence. Let's look at the second then. Here we have a coordinate conjunction, but it's one of these here. And then we have another part. Never let yourself be defeated. So this is also a full independent clause. And they are joined by but again. Now there are also many other, we call them coordinate conjunctions, but we're gonna just suffice with these here. Now how to punctuate. This is very important. Okay, we need to place a comma before a coordinate conjunction. Let's look at this one here. He doesn't like to do house chores, nor does he like to work in the garden. As you can see, he doesn't like to do house chores, nor does he like to work in the garden. So here we have a coordinate conjunction, we put a comma before it. So basically, if you have a coordinate conjunction, just like and, or, nor, but, and then you have a full sentence here, you need to put a comma before that. Let's see another example here. The library welcomes all members to make use of facilities available, comma, but it will not tolerate any bad behavior within its building. As you can see, we have but, the coordinate conjunction. There is a full sentence or an independent clause here, so we put a comma before that. This is very important for writing, guys. Many people make mistakes in this one. Now, the last type of sentences is called compound complex sentences. Now, this is a sentence having two or more coordinate independent clauses and one or more dependent clauses. Let's look at this example together. The Ministry of Health made some important decisions, and the local authorities made sure to follow them because of the spread of COVID-19. So the first part is an independent clause. It can stand alone, as you can see. Then we have an independent clause, another one. The local authorities made sure to follow them. And we used here a coordinate conjunction, and the last one is because of the spread of COVID-19. This is a dependent clause. Now let's take another example of a sentence. I want you to guess what type the sentence is. Now it's similar to the one that we did before, but it has some modification here. While the Ministry of Health made some important decisions, the local authorities made sure to follow them because of the spread of COVID-19. Now we started with the dependent clause, as you can see. I know that because it cannot stand alone as a full sentence, and it has while at the beginning. Notice the comma as well. This is very important again in writing. Then we have an independent clause. The local authorities made sure to follow them. And then we added also another dependent clause, which is because of the spread of COVID-19. So the question is, what type of sentence is this? It's a complex sentence. I know it looks long. You might think it's a compound complex sentence, but because it has only one dependent clause, two dependent clauses, and one independent clause, it's a complex sentence. So what types of sentences shall I include in my writing and speaking? This is the most important question here. Now, you should include a variety of sentence structures and tenses in your writing. You should also avoid using simple sentences all the time, as it negatively affects your mark. Now, this is very important because many students tend to use simple sentences, unaware that not using a variety of structures would affect their mark. So make sure to put everything, a variety of tenses, sentence structures, etc. Well, we have come to the end of this video today. That's it. So hopefully you have enjoyed this video. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and share with others. Have a lovely day. Bye.